AMP value equivalent to $0.78 a coin. The present exchanged cost range was 76078. The earlier day closed by 76. The change was plus 263%. Converse rate as to AMP. AMP gauge for August 2024. To start with cost at $0.71. Exorbitant costs are at 8, while low costs 7.1. They found the middle value of cost 1.78. AMP cost gauge toward the month's end 0.2. Change for August 15.5%. AMP cost expectation for September 2024. To start with cost at $0.2. Exorbitant costs are 2, while low costs be at 2. They found the middle value of cost in point. AMP cost gauge toward the month's end 0.95. Change for September 59%. AMP gauge for October 2024. In the first place, cost at $0.95. Exorbitant cost 0.3, while low costs 9. They found the middle value of cost 0.96. AMP cost gauge toward the month's end 0.96. Change for October 1%. AMP cost expectation for November 2024. In the first place, cost at $0.96. Exorbitant costs 0.119, while low costs 0.96. They found the middle value of cost 0.16. AMP cost estimate toward the month's end 0.111. Change for November 15.6%. AMP estimate for December 2024. First and foremost, cost at $0.111. Exorbitant costs 0.138, while low costs 0.111. They found the middle value of cost 0.122. AMP cost estimate toward the month's end 0.129. Change for December 16.2%. AMP cost expectation for January 2025. First and foremost, cost at $0.129. Excessive costs 0.139, while low costs 0.121. They arrived at the midpoint of costs 1/3. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.1. Change for January's 8%. AMP figure for February 2025. Before all else, cost at $0.1. Excessive cost 0.144, while low costs 0.126. They arrived at the midpoint of costs 0.134. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.135. Change for February 3.8%. AMP cost expectation for Walk 2025. Before all else, cost at $0.135. Excessive costs 0.149, while low costs 0.129. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.138. AMP cost conjecture toward the month's end 0.139. Change for spring 3.0%. AMP conjecture for April 2025. At the outset, cost at $0.139. Excessive costs 0.164, while low costs 0.139. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.149. AMP cost conjecture toward the month's end 0.153. Change for April 10.1%. AMP cost expectation for May 2025. First and foremost, cost at $0.153. Exorbitant cost 0.170, while low cost 0.148. They found the middle value of cost 0.158. AMP cost estimate toward the month's end 0.159. Change for May 3.9%. AMP conjecture for June 2025. At the outset, cost at $0.159. Excessive cost 0.177, while low costs 0.153. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.164. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.165. Change for June 3.8%. AMP cost expectation for July 2025. Initially cost at $0.165. Excessive costs 1 year, while low costs 0.156. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.167. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.168. Change for July 1.8%. AMP figure for August 2025. Initially cost at $0.168. Excessive costs 1.87, while low costs 0.163. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.173. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.175. Change for August 4.2%. AMP cost expectation for September 2025. Before all else, cost at $0.175. Excessive costs are at 1.17, while low costs are 1.75. They arrived at the midpoint of cost 0.193. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.3. Change for September 16%. AMP figure for October 2025. Before all else, cost at $0.3. Exorbitant costs were to 5.1, while low costs to 3. They found the middle value of cost on to 2.3. AMP cost gauge toward the month's ends 2.35. Change for October 15.8%. AMP cost expectation for November 2025. To start with, cost at $0.35. Exorbitant costs $2.35, while low cost $0.191. Found the middle value of cost owned to 17. AMP cost gauge toward the month's end 2.5, change for November 12.8%. AMP gauge for December 2025. To start with, cost at $0 to $5. Excessive costs $2.5, while low costs are $1.6. Arrived at the midpoint of costs are $1.6. AMP cost conjecture toward the month's end 0.172, change for December 16.1%. AMP cost expectation for January 2026. At the outset, cost at $0.172. Excessive costs are $1.83, while low costs are $1.59. Arrived at the midpoint of costs are $1.71. AMP cost conjecture toward the month's end 0.171, change for January's on 6%. AMP conjecture for February 2026. At the outset, cost at $0.171. Excessive costs are $1.71, while low costs are $1.34. Arrived at the midpoint of costs on $1.55. AMP cost conjecture toward the month's end 0.144, change for February 15.8%. AMP cost expectation for Walk 2026. At the outset, cost at $0.144. Excessive costs $0.144, while low costs are $0.113. Arrived at the midpoint of costs are $0.131. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.121, change for spring 16%. AMP figure for April 2026. Initially cost at $0.121. Excessive costs $0.121, while low costs. Arrived at the midpoint of costs are $1.12. AMP cost figure toward the month's end 0.107, change for April 11.6%. To AMP expectation for May 2024. Before all else, cost at $121.95 coins. Excessive cost $149.25, while low $108.70. Arrived at the midpoint of cost $126.23. To AMP figure toward the month's end 125 as in change for May 25%. To AMP figure for June 2024. Initially cost at 125 as in coins. Excessive cost $142.86, while low $105.26. Arrived at the midpoint of cost $123.04. To AMP figure toward the month's end 119.5, change for June 4.8%. To AMP expectation for July 2024. Initially cost at 119.5 coins. Excessive cost $151.52, while low $119.5. Arrived at the midpoint of cost $132.62. To AMP figure toward the month's end 140.85, change for July 18.3%. To AMP figure for August 2024. Before all else,